The March of Time. Most tranquil spot in the post-war chaos which has ruled the Far East for the last 6 years is the island of Formosa, which has become a nation existing in suspended animation. Under the rule of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, it is now the home of the Chinese government in exile, recognized by the United States as the true government of China. From Formosa, Chiang carries on his long and valiant effort to defeat the forces of communism. Protecting this government by presidential decree are the warships and planes of the U.S. 7th Fleet. They maintain a close patrol of the Formosa Strait, the 100 miles of water that separate Formosa from communist China. For in the vast reaches of the far Pacific, the island of Formosa is of strategic importance to the free world, and it is now under the effective protection of the United States. On Formosa are the remnants of Chiang's Air Force, planes which once harried the mainland, but are now neutralized by the United States government. For the most part, Chiang's planes stay on the ground or in the repair shops, where the mechanics wrestle with the never-ending problem of a shortage of parts. Chiang's army, consisting of those troops who escaped from the mainland, now numbers an estimated 500,000 men, not all of whom are ready for combat, although they are being trained in ever-increasing numbers. The ground forces, under the command of VMI graduate General Sun Li-ren, are being turned into the nucleus of an effective and well-trained army. Today, morale is higher than it has ever been. Major reforms in Army training have been instituted. All soldiers now have pay books, and permanent records are kept as proof that they have received their pay. And for the first time, the troops are fed regularly and adequately. Helping to raise morale on Formosa is the presence on the island of the U.S. Military Assistance Advisory Group. Working with General Cho Chi-ro, head of the armed forces, is General William Chase, chief of the U.S. Advisory Group. General Chase administers the multi-million-dollar military grant made by the U.S. to modernize Chiang's army. At present, members of the group, which will total 1,000 officers and men in 1952, work on a divisional level with the Chinese, teaching them the maintenance and use of modern American weapons. Eventually, they will serve as instructors in strategy and tactics. Formosa has borne up well under the impact of nearly 1 million refugees, civil and military, from the mainland, although life for most Formosans is greatly changed. Chiang's police force operates with all the devices known to a state besieged and fighting for its very existence against a wily and unprincipled enemy. Much of the police force's work consists of apprehending communist agents infiltrated from the mainland and of interrogating at great length communist suspects. Mere suspicion of having communist sympathies is cause enough for arrest, and accusations of such leanings are frequent and often fatal in every walk of life. Since his arrival on Formosa in late 1949, Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, the authentic voice of free China, has not left the island. All his efforts have been aimed at strengthening his position in preparation for a return to the mainland as a liberator. Madame Chiang Kai-shek has engaged in many good works on the island, such as the organization of her countrywomen into the Women's Anti-Aggression League. The League's many activities include sewing groups, whose output goes exclusively to the armed forces. Most mysterious figure on Formosa today is General Zhang Jingguo, elder son of Chiang Kai-shek. Zhang Jingguo, ruthlessly efficient, exercises rigid control of the army through a network of political agents. Among the most able and honest officials on Formosa is General Chen Cheng, Prime Minister of Nationalist China. He it is who brought order out of the chaos created when Zhang's followers first arrived on the island. Zhang's government has brought to the people of Formosa their first taste of democracy since the war, in the form of the election of county magistrates. Supporters of the various candidates for office waged an energetic campaign for their favorites, who had been carefully screened to establish their loyalty to the government before their names were permitted to appear on the ballot. In this way, the election of honest and competent magistrates was assured. The effective government of Formosa on a working level is in the hands of the Provincial Council, which consists of Chinese from the mainland and of Formosans who have had experience in government. They work under the direction of brilliant, Princeton-educated K.C. Wu, governor of Formosa, firm supporter of the free world's policies. But regardless of the ability and determination of the Chinese government on Formosa, success would be possible without the support of the ECA and of the Joint Commission on Rural Reconstruction, the JCRR. The JCRR, working with ECA funds, is composed of American and Chinese experts, and it has underwritten the revolutionary program of land rent reform initiated by the Chinese government. Most of Formosa's 6.5 million people live and work on the land, and in times past they have paid as much as 75% of their crops to their landlords. But under the land rent reform, unique in Asia, the landlord's rent is limited to 37.5% of the crop. For many a hard-working Formosan peasant, such as Farmer Liu, who is typical of thousands of his countrymen, the rent reform has meant the difference between grinding poverty and a satisfactory standard of living. At his home in Tainan County, southern Formosa, Farmer Liu and his family are today enjoying life once more. Soon after the rent reform became law, Liu obtained the first lease he had ever had. By the terms of this lease, he and his family could keep for themselves enough of his crop to sell at a profit, and thus assure the family's security. Farmer Liu, like many of his fellow farmers, takes full advantage of the benefits made available to him by the Rural Reconstruction Program. He now makes a practice of taking some of his excess rice to one of the warehouses which have been set up through the use of JCRR funds. There he exchanges the rice for fertilizer imported by the ECA, by the use of which he can increase the yield of his land. Commission on Rural Reconstruction, in order to raise the peasant's standard of living, provides support for 369 rural health stations throughout Formosa. When Farmer Liu's infant son, Liu Tsung Chen, catches cold, his mother, overcoming ancient superstitions, which date from the abyss of time, now takes him to a qualified physician for examination and treatment. To protect the peasants from avaricious landlords, there are mobile teams of arbitrators, supported by the Joint Commission, to which the peasants can bring their complaints. If the landlord wants Liu to grow more sugar and less rice, Farmer Liu, to whose advantage it is to grow rice, can insist on holding his landlord to the terms of the lease. After hearing both sides of the dispute, the arbitrators, in spite of any argument the landlord may advance, will inevitably support Liu in his just complaint. Constantly, members of the Commission staff in Formosa make inspection trips to see at first hand how much progress is being made in the program to reconstruct and expand Formosan agriculture. By this free interchange of ideas and techniques, the whole program has benefited to such an extent that it has become an outstanding example of the ways in which the United States can help underdeveloped nations to help themselves. Seven agricultural experimental stations, whose work is aided by JCRR funds, are maintained to bring the benefits of modern agricultural science to the farmers. From eggs imported from the United States, new and improved flocks of chickens are being developed by crossbreeding. In the field of animal husbandry, the native breed of swine is being strengthened through the importation of 365 Berkshire hogs. And to protect the gains already made, an island-wide campaign to inoculate swine against cholera has been started. Throughout Formosa, the JCRR has set up displays of instructional posters so that knowledge of the benefits of modern agricultural methods may be available to every peasant. Linking the work of the JCRR and the peasants are the farmers' associations of Formosa. These associations, which operate as cooperatives, act also as transmission centers for new techniques and for news of the latest developments in the program to help improve Formosan agriculture. But the farmers are not the only ones on Formosa who are getting an example of the modernization all Asia can profit from. New power stations are being set up with Economic Cooperation Administration funds. And with the electricity thus made available, new factories can be operated. Already, the network of power stations built during the Japanese occupation has been reconstructed. And today, the extensive hydroelectric system on Formosa is among the most efficient in the Far East. Within the last 2 years, the United States has spent over $5 million on major improvements to the power system. The ECA has backed the reconstruction of Formosa's war-ruined ports and their dockside equipment so that her foreign trade may move with its pre-war efficiency. And with extensive American help, the railroad system is being rehabilitated in a 2-year program of rebuilding and repair. Sugar refineries have been modernized by the ECA, and Formosan sugar is once again, as it was during the Japanese occupation, the main export crop of the island. As a part of the program to lessen the dependence of Formosa's economy on American funds and to make the island as self-sufficient as possible, the ECA has helped to re-equip Formosa's biggest fertilizer factory. In time, the island will be made independent of imported fertilizer. As a result of the ECA's program on Formosa, the island's economy has survived the shock of becoming a refuge for the multitude of Chinese exiled from the mainland. The runaway inflation has been brought under control, and now plans can be made with some assurance of stable conditions in the future. But threatening all the progress made on Formosa is the ever-present menace of Communist China. To combat this threat, Zhang's government makes use of all the instruments at its command. Radio broadcasts depicting the horrors of mass executions by the communists on the mainland and the increasing difficulties of the Chinese communists are beamed at the mainland and throughout Southeast Asia. Always the messages to the mainland Chinese end with words of hope.
我们相信，在不久之将来，我们可以把一般同胞从共产党铁蹄之下拯救出来。
Because of Zhang's conviction that he will someday return to the mainland as a liberator, a school for training personnel to lead his future government has been set up near Taipei. Here, trusted followers are trained in administration and also learn what conditions they may expect to meet on the mainland and how to cope with them. Constantly, but in lesser numbers these days, Zhang's agents manage to get safely back from the mainland with detailed information on the extent of local guerrilla resistance to the communists, and with reports of areas of civil discontent under communist rule. This secret intelligence from behind the bamboo curtain of China is invaluable to the Western world. Meanwhile, along Formosa's beaches, maneuvers designed to test the island's defenses are carried out with more optimism than they have ever been before. Today, backed by the promise of material aid from the United States government, the emphasis during maneuvers is on attack rather than defense. For Zhang's troops now have more reason to hope that someday, perhaps in the distant future, they will return to their ancestral home. But whether or not the Chinese on Formosa do return to the mainland, the natives of Formosa will have demonstrated by their own work what miracles of promise lie in the future for the peoples of all the underdeveloped nations of the world. Time marches on.